Hello, welcome to a new episode of Rants with Danny Shi. Today is December 17th. It's been, 3 weeks since my last episode, and I'm still in the celebration mode. I'm still living in the dream of the Premier 12 Global Championship by Team Taiwan. I still listen to all of the cheer songs during the games, during the tournament in Taipei or in Tokyo during my workout. It is still a very energizing and motivating piece of music or pieces of music during the workout. I've been trying to do some what do you call it? Running shuttle runs where you run back and forth for about like 1, 2, 3, like one way. That's running one way. That's one. Coming back is two. I've been running like 10 of those at each round, I guess. And then, yeah, there's nothing. There's really nothing that can make me actually do that. Then other than the Team Taiwan Premier 12 Championship, or just Premier 12 music, Team Taiwan's cheer songs, and I've learned quite a bit of other songs that they play quite a bit, especially the TSG Hawks cheer song. That's also a nice one to listen to and nice one to cheer. It's a difficult dance. The choreography on that one is much more complex than the other songs, but I'm not the one dancing it, and so I like the music, and all of the cheerleaders obviously done a tremendous job learning it and executing it during the entirety of the tournament, especially the Taipei rounds. But reflecting on 2024, first of all, I apologize. This is not the best year of this podcast. I'm not going to try to hide anything. Trying to find a way to regularly do this, especially now I'm sharing my apartment with somebody else. The walls are quite thin. I don't want to disrupt anybody. Try to minimize that as much as possible. So trying to find windows or times to record this podcast, as well as all the other challenges that I've mentioned in the past. But 2024 for Taiwanese baseball, though, extremely significant and one for the record books. And in my opinion, it is the greatest year in Taiwanese baseball history. I was thinking about doing an episode like this a while ago, and I've just been thinking about, what are the big events of 2024 for Taiwanese baseball, and I was thinking, it could be one of the greatest years of Taiwanese baseball. We know with the Taipei Dome, with the All-Star Game being the way it was, and average attendance being a record high, partly because of the Taipei Dome, and then as the Premier 12 went on, the fact that we're in the second round. In fact, before the Premier 12, I don't lie about stuff like this, but before the Premier 12, I was gonna do an episode of, look, we're already in one of the greatest years in Taiwanese baseball history with the Taipei Dome, with the cheerleaders continuing to bring baseball to mainstream media in Taiwan, and the Taipei Dome being the by far the best avenue, the best venue for Taiwanese baseball. The fact that you can not be in the heat and in the Taiwanese summer heat while enjoying a game of baseball, watching a game of baseball, and then you have the All-Star Game being, I don't think it's surpassable that the way that the All-Star Game went and how great that was, how great the moments were. And then you talk about the CTBC brothers, inevitably, as much as I don't want to admit it, when the brothers win a championship, it is a bigger deal than other teams winning a championship because of the fanfare that is the CTBC brothers, the fact that more people can relate to the brothers, the more people love the brothers. And then, so before the Premier 12, I was thinking this is one of the greatest years in Taiwanese baseball history. Definitely the best year since the 2009, the darkest days of the CPBL. And then you talk about, returning to 6 teams. That's a huge deal. You're bringing in more combination of matchups. You're bringing in another huge market in Taiwan, relatively big market in Kaohsiung. The TSG Hawks has done tremendously in their marketing advertising, trying to establish a local identity in Kaohsiung, and the Wei Trend Dragons continue to establish themselves in Taipei. Yu Chang coming back to Taiwan, all of that stuff, right? That makes this year particularly great. And I was gonna say we could have squandered this year by finishing last in the Premier 12 or having a bad appearance. The CPBL itself had garnered a lot of momentum going into 2025. And then I was thinking, oh man, like we're really going to not squander the opportunity, but the fact that the Premier 12 was happening and the roster didn't look great and nobody really expected much out of Team Taiwan. You're thinking, oh, like this is going to have a negative impact on the year, even though this has been a great year. And unfortunately for the CPBL, Taiwan's performance in international tournaments has a unfair and disproportionate influence on the image of the CPBL and its standing within the Taiwanese community. And you can see that through Taiwan winning the championship of the Premier 12 in November, how that is going to attract such a huge following from people that didn't really follow the CPBL beforehand to now really knowing more about the players, knowing about Chen Jiexian, knowing about all of these stars on Team Taiwan, that all but 2 are from the CPBL, so they're getting to know all these players. But again, conversely, imagine if Taiwan had performed below expectations, or even to their expectations because their expectations are so low, how that would negatively impact the CPBL going to 2025. And it's an unfair thing. But ultimately, unless you're Major League Baseball, right? And unless you're Nippon Professional Baseball League, which up until recently has jumped out of that realm of the NPB their status or their how people think of the NPB aren't really influenced by how Japan does in international tournaments, mostly because Japan has done so well in the international tournament, and they have exported so many high quality players to Major League Baseball. But the CPBL is not there yet, and so when you're trying to evaluate the level of play of the CPBL, international tournaments is I used plural. International tournaments are your best way to measure where Taiwanese baseball is compared to the rest of the world. And for a huge part of your performance in those short-term tournaments are outside the control of the CPBL as a whole. You can put in a lot of energy, you can put in a lot of money into baseball. Taiwanese baseball could have grown a lot, but a couple of bad pitches or a couple of bad swings, all of a sudden you're a 3-1 team, but now you're 2-2 when you're playing the qualifier for the next tournament. Stuff like that. It's unfairly judged. The CPBL is unfairly judged through their international tournaments, but at the end of the day, in order for the CPBL to get out of that, there's a long ways to go. And not only are the CPBL teams being judged by the scouts from Major League Baseball or Japanese baseball or Korean baseball, but they're also being judged by Taiwanese people themselves. And unfortunately, again, international tournaments are the end all be all when you come to evaluate the level of play of the CPBL. Again, unless you're Major League Baseball, right? Like, you're always going to be compared to the best of the world. And where are we? Where is the CPBL? When I buy a ticket to the CPBL games, what kind of baseball, what level of baseball am I really watching? And unless you're a baseball expert, your next thing would be, okay, how do our players compare to the other countries? And with the lack of exports from Taiwanese baseball to the rest of the world, conversely, with the influx of players coming back from the U.S. and coming back from Japan, these homegrown CPBL players only have one avenue to compare themselves to the rest of the world, and that is through international tournaments. And so I was thinking, hey, look, if we had done so poorly in the Premier 12, it would have negatively impacted, right, the way the CPBL is being looked at for 2025, and that is very unfair considering that the steps and strides that the CPBL had made in 2024. But all that was moot. Not the fact that the CPBL was being judged by international tournaments, but my worry for our performance in the Premier 12, because we, at the end of the day, made history and won our first championship in adult baseball tournaments. And I spent an hour last episode talking about it. But outside of just the global championship, which I will spend time on because, again, the last 3 weeks I haven't done much of anything else besides working, of course. Thank you. My boss is probably listening. I was working, of course. And also watching and listening a lot of interviews of players, coaches, and Commissioner Tsai Chi-chang. And also today had our scouting team was being interviewed by the Taiwanese version of PBS on a hour-long episode TV show on how they accomplished such a insurmountable task that was beating Japan and winning the World Championship. And my mind is still stuck on this thing, and I will spend time talking about it later in the show. But right now, I want to focus on some of the other events which happened in 2024 that make me think that 2024 was and is, and we're still in 2024, but with the end of the Winter Baseball League as well. The fact that the 2024 season was the best year in Taiwanese baseball history, and starting with the beginning and the inauguration of the Taipei Dome. Now, it was inaugurated technically at the end of 2023, but being the first CPBL season to actually use the Taipei Dome, and I also talked about the significance of the Taipei Dome, how meaningful it was for Taiwan to actually have this venue. Hearing from all of the people that have visited and watched games at the Dome, it seemed like, and I can't wait to go watch a game there, but it seemed like it's a tier 1 venue for a sporting event. And it is, if it's 40,000 people, it straight up doubled the capacity, the max capacity of Taiwanese Baseball Stadium. Previous high was Intercontinental Stadium and Taoyuan in an International Baseball Stadium, which fit 20,000. Now the Taipei Dome can fit 40,000. And the fact that we as Taiwanese baseball fans have been waiting for this dome because it was supposed to be done for the 2017 Universiade, which is the university version of the Olympics. which was hosted in Taipei. It was the key marquee venue for the Universiade in 2017, but it was not done until the end of 2023 because of, I'm just going to leave it to politics. I'm not going to get into why, but so much waiting, so much. Look, this is a subtropical island with a lot of rain, a lot of unexpected weather, and to finally have a indoor stadium, and one that has turf. A lot of the times before 2024, when Team Taiwan goes to Japan and plays for the Premier 12 for the World Baseball Classic, it's always something to talk about where, the Taiwanese players have to get used to the turf because there are no turf fields in Taiwan besides Tianmu, which was turf until not until like what, 2021, 2022, but even then it's an outdoor stadium where most of stadiums in Japan, which especially those that host international tournaments, are domes. And you're like, oh, these Taiwanese players have to get used to the dome. It's such, it's an undertaking to do that. But then with the Taipei Dome now, players are getting used to playing in that sort of an environment. And now you're talking about, now the difference is when they go to the Tokyo Dome this time, which is, it's a inflated dome versus just a much more structured, I guess, dome. That is the Taipei Dome. It's like, okay, now you're talking about smaller details, but their experiences playing in the Taipei Dome should really help them get used to the other venues when it comes to international tournaments, even especially those played in Japan. And you're talking about Taipei City finally have a stadium that is at the level of what Taipei is. Now, I'm from Taipei, and so a lot of, if you are from Taiwan and not from Taipei, you're thinking, oh, you Sky Dragon people. I'm one of those people, okay? But the capital of a baseball playing country, that is Taiwan, deserves a marquee venue for baseball. And for 2 decades we didn't have that. Now you can say we have Tianmu Baseball Stadium, but for one, you can't play music after 10 p.m., which makes it very difficult to play professional baseball, especially a CPBL game where it used to be 4 hours long. And two, when I visited Tianmu, when I went back in the summer of 23, and I stepped inside Tianmu Baseball Stadium, it felt like an upgraded community ballpark. It did not feel like a professional baseball stadium. Intercontinental Stadium feels like in a professional baseball stadium. I don't know how to explain it. The way that Tianmu is situated, where they were situated. Now it overlooks the Yangming Mountains, which is beautiful. It should be Yangming Mountain, right? Like, I think that's the mountain. And but the way that it was, where it was situated, you're talking about malls right next to it. You're talking about built like a park, and it's like a residential buildings next to it. The way I'm explaining it doesn't really make sense, because you look at Yankee Stadium, for example, it's also close to residential neighborhoods. But to me, when I step into Tianmu Baseball Stadium, the scale of it doesn't feel professional. It feels like an upgraded community baseball stadium. And with the Taipei Dome, you finally have not only a professional level baseball stadium, but probably you're talking about up there with the likes of the Tokyo Dome, maybe. Now, there are some hardware stuff you need to take care of, like the screen that apparently looks fine when you're in person, but from the photos it really looked like a very small screen. And they compare that with the Tokyo Dome, which they added the Seeming like the super wide screen. Now there's still a difference, right, between the two stadiums, but at the end of the day, Taipei Dome was and the inauguration of the Taipei Dome was a significant part of the revival, I would say, of the domestic baseball league of Taiwan. This year, almost everybody, probably outside of one team, averaged more than 20,000 people in attendance per game. Before the Taipei Dome, the max capacity was 20,000, let alone averaging 20,000. But when you're talking about being able to watch games again with air conditioning, with close to it's the most accessible stadium, in my opinion, than any other stadiums in Taiwan. You have the largest line, the metro line, coming to that stadium, being at this not technically the epicenter, but really close to the center of Taipei. You have so many ways to get there. There is dozens and dozens of buses going around that gets to the Taipei Dome. It is, if you live in Taipei, like our house, we're not super close to the center of the city, but even for us, it only takes us like 20 minutes to get there through public transportation. It's so much more accessible, and so it's surrounded by a lot of good business. Like it makes the whole experience great because you can go there, you can eat good food at good restaurants around it, go watch a baseball game, leave I'm talking about if you're from Taipei, okay? Leave, and you can get home. Let's say the game is at 2 p.m. on a Sunday. You can get home and still have time for dinner, or you can have dinner at another good restaurant around the corner, and then get home, and it's still like 7 p.m. Now, if you're not from Taipei, then you take the train to Taipei main station, and then it's the same line that gets you. You don't need to change the line. It's the same line that gets you to the Taipei Dome. And if it's a 5 p.m. game, you have whole day spending. You can spend the entire day in Taipei, watch a 5 p.m. game, ends at 8:30, let's say. Get back to the main station, and then on your way back to your house, and you could probably get there before midnight. That's obvious, depending on where you live outside of Taipei. Of course, it really depends on where you are. But my point is, Tianmu, for example, very inaccessible. It doesn't. The closest metro station is like a 20-minute drive from it. Xinzhuang is relatively accessible, but it's in New Taipei City. If you take the metro, it's a 5-10 minute walk from the nearest metro station, which is not the worst. But then it's on one of the outskirts stations. So even if you live in Taipei City, you probably need to take an hour. That's from my experience. It takes about an hour to get to Xinzhuang, and then you walk to the stadium. Of course, Intercontinental Stadium. Not an expert on how to get to Intercontinental Baseball Stadium, but to me, what I heard is when you get off the high-speed rail, get off the train station, it still takes a while to get to Intercontinental Baseball Stadium. Taoyuan, accessible. There's a airport metro that gets there, but if the game goes past, like 11 p.m., then you're stuck in Taoyuan. Or if 90% of the time when the game ends, well, first of all, there are no express trains that gets to Taoyuan International Baseball Stadium from Taipei, and so you gotta take the train and then stop at like 172 stops before you get back to Taipei, right? So relatively, it's accessible to the rest of the other stadiums, but there's still challenges. Tainan, very accessible. It's actually in the heart of the city. So not a lot of complaint from me in terms of accessibility of Tainan. But again, Tainan's a very car-driven, motorcycle-driven city. Hard to park. It's what I experienced and what I heard. But again, the Taipei Dome, in terms of accessibility, in my opinion, is on a whole nother level. That on top of air conditioning, that on top of the communities being surrounded by, and the fact that it's a 40,000 capacity stadium. It's huge. And again, it's like, I can't wait to get back to Taiwan and watch a game there. I need to pick like a summer month and get back and watch a game there. My uncle's seen it. Watch a game there. My uncle's from Boston. Well, she now lives in Boston. He's seen it before I did. My sister, which hadn't seen a baseball game like since like, I don't know, when she was like 7, has seen a game at the Taipei Dome before I have. And obviously my parents have been there. My cousin has been there. I haven't been there. I'm like the last of the people. I'm just jealous of each and every one of them, and I can't wait to get to the Taipei Dome and watch a game. And the fact that with the stadium like that, you can attract the likes of the Yomiuri Giants, or in next year's case, the Nippon Ham Fighters, or you can attract teams from abroad to come in and play, or just have a showcase, or play with CPBL teams, which can the exchange that happens, the cultural exchange that happens, it's the benefits are immeasurable. And having a dome like the Taipei Dome creates opportunity like that for Taiwan to continue to grow. Having a dome like that gives Taiwan many more reasons to host the likes of the World Baseball Classic. Maybe even like an opening day series of Major League Baseball in the Taipei Dome. Before the Taipei Dome, we're going to put them in Intercontinental? Really? Not even in the capital of your country? And it's an outdoor stadium if it rains or rained out? Really? Like, MLB wasn't going to do that. Or it was going to take a lot more to convince them to come do that. But now with the Taipei Dome, you're talking about a tier 1 kind of venue. Nothing's going to get rained out, right? There are no games in the Taipei Dome that's going to get rained out. Now there are leaks that can make it feel like it's raining inside, but that's not supposed to happen. And there are no rainouts. The Team Taiwan was practicing in the dome when there was a typhoon outside before the Premier 12. So, good stuff. The Taipei Dome, I think, is one of the most underrated part of the CPBL season of 2024. And again, every single team outside of one, I believe, averaged more than 20,000 people. Averaged 20,000 people in the Taipei Dome. So, good stuff. I'm not going to name which team that was, but good stuff. The number 2 is 6 teams. The CPBL app, for the first time since the 2008 season, expanded back to a 6-team scale. The TSG Hawks, finishing the puzzle. Look, you can talk about how Taiwan's population might not be able to sustain 6 professional baseball teams, and to be honest with you, I'm on your side. The U.S. has 300 million people that supports 30 top-level professional baseball leagues teams. In Japan, you have 100 million people supporting 10 or 12 top-tier professional baseball leagues. I'm not talking about minor league baseball. I'm not talking about the developmental leagues. But even in the case of the U.S., the consumer habit in terms of sports entertainment is so much better, and it's not better, but so much more extensive than Taiwan. And then you talk about Taiwan, which has a population of 24 million. By default, with the same scale, you're probably thinking about two teams, 2.4 teams, if you're doing it with a similar scale, right? If you're talking about 100 million or just below that for like 90 million people per, 9 million people per team, you're not talking about like 2 to 3 teams. But I think 4 teams it's reasonable in Taiwan if you're not like letting go of that formula. 4 teams is probably reasonable in you talking about the market size, but having 4 teams is just not a pro league. You're just a Sunday softball league at that point, which is what I'm a part of last fall, and I did enjoyed that quite a lot. But again, 4 teams is not. It's not the scale that you want to be at if you're a pro league. You have to extend beyond 4. 5 kind of works, but the scheduling is just a mess. And we saw that in 2021, 22, and 23. Scheduling was a mess. Traveling, thank goodness Taiwan is a small island, so you can't get to one place. You can get from one place to the next at a relatively short time frame, but 6 teams is where it's at. I don't know. I don't think there is another team coming. I don't think we can support that. And if you do 7, you're honestly talking about a charity league at that point. Like, I don't think it's financially sustainable to have more than 6. 6, I think you're really pushing it. 7, I don't see it. The only possible slimmer of chance I think it could happen is if you put the game in if you put the team in Hsinchu, which does not have a team right now. But that stadium, we don't know when that's gonna get inaugurated. But again, you're talking about another 60 players, the professional baseball league level players. As of right now, I don't see Taiwan expanding to 7. So 6, I think, is very healthy, and that's why I said the TSG Hawks finished the puzzle. You added the 6th team. It's a more interesting league to talk about because you're picking 3 playoff teams out of 6 rather than 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5. You can be mediocre and get into the playoffs. That is the definition of it. You can finish 500. You can be in the middle of the pack, and you can make your way to the playoffs. This year, although you're still seeing a little bit of that, but at a less crazy scale, in my opinion. The Monkeys are only 5 games above 500, but they're theoretically top 50%. They're not at 50%, they're above that. So, look, I think having the 6th team is tremendous. You're including 2 southern markets, the Uni Lions and the TSG Hawks. The TSG Hawks really going out there and trying to sign as many big-time free agents as they can. Respect. And to them, it makes sense because it's not like their roster has enough depth that would worry you from being picked on by the other teams when they're picking your players to compensate for your free agent. But at the end of the day, the Hawks are making big moves. They're not sitting there as an expansion team and just saying we don't have the money or we're still developing. They're swinging big, and that's going to help create, at least in the short term, some good marketing opportunities that can help you establish an identity quickly. I talked about this many times. It's unreasonable to compare the growth of the TSG Hawks compared to the Weichun Dragons. The Dragons came in when Taiwanese Baseball had at least 4.5 teams worth of professional baseball level players. That a good amount of them was waiting in the pro amateur baseball league, waiting for an opportunity. because at the time there was only four teams. And the Waging Dragons came in and they took a lot of the top talent from the Pro Am League that are professional level talent players. And they also did quite well in. They also came in at the two most talented draft class in terms of top end talent draft classes in CBBL history due to COVID from 2020 2021 with the amount of high-end players coming back from abroad. Now looking back, a lot of them have not panned out as well as people had hoped. But you're still talking about an opportunity to sign the best high school players at a very reasonable round and at a reasonable pick location, when the White Dragons had 2 picks per round in the first 2 rounds. So not only have they had the opportunity to sign top-end talent unlike anybody in their first 2 to 3 draft classes, but the opportunity that was given to the Raging Dragons to sign top-end high school developmental projects during those 2 years, that's the most underrated part of their roster. Now the Hawks came in, the Dragons just took the best pro and amateur players. The best one. I'm talking about adult amateur players. 2 years later, they come into the league. I don't think the depth of Taiwanese baseball players have expanded by 16% within a span of 2 years. And they didn't have the help of the COVID seasons where you have these crazy draft classes. That will make the TSG Hawks developmental projects and path much tougher and much longer than the Dragons. It is unreasonable, in my opinion, to expect the Hawks to win a championship by the third year. The Dragons didn't even believe it. The Dragons thought we need 3 years to develop, and then we will compete for a championship. They won in year 3. They won the playoff in year 2. The Hawks will now make the playoff this year, at 2025. And again, I talked about this a lot in the past year, 2 years even. Don't compare them apples to apples. Now, it's easy to do it, and I have done it myself. But you got to keep, if you're going to compare the two trajectories, you got to keep a lot of things in mind, because there are a lot of things at play that makes it hard for the Hawks to catch up to the rest of the league that the Dragons have. That along with the fact that in terms of marketing, the Dragons already had an identity. They inherited the identity that was the Wei-Chen Dragons. The Hawks have to start everything from ground zero. So I think the Hawks have done a tremendous job in terms of marketing, in terms of creating a culture within the fan base. But that still takes time. And I do think that the one thing I think that is going on for the TSG Hawks is the CBBL today is in a much different place in 2021, even 2020, 2019. And the Hawks have a lot of momentum in terms of marketing, in terms of culture, to help grab a lot of new fans. And that is something that the Dragons did not have. I'll give the Hawks that. But again, the league returning to 6 teams, having 2 teams in the southern market, one team in middle of the country, which is the Brothers, but they are the biggest brand in the CBPL, and they have the largest fan base. And then you got 3 teams dividing the northern market, which I don't know if you add a 4th team there. I really don't think you should add one more there. But look, but I think Taipei, Taoyuan, New Taipei City as a whole can stomach it. It's just how much are you gonna, how big is baseball really going to be after the Premier 12, which I think is going to be big, and it's going to be interesting to see how each team's balance sheet comes out at the end of the 2025 season, and having 6 teams is huge. Having 6 teams is huge for the ZPPL. The All-Star Game, I spent an entire episode on it. The All-Star Game really had brought back a lot of old baseball fans. Not old in terms of age, but a lot of fans that kind of gave up on the CPBL back in the 2000s. And I think the All-Star Game, the way that it was played out with all of these legendary players on the field at the same time, unplanned, by the way, and that's part of the greatness of it. It helped garner some old baseball fans back into the CPPL to an extent, and then the Premier 12 put the what's the phrase? Put the final was the final straw. I think a lot of the older baseball fans are going to come back to the CPPL next year. A lot of them are probably going to leave because of how loud the CPPL games are nowadays. It takes a while to get used to. If you're a baseball fan that's listening to this, first of all, in Taiwan, thank you for listening to a English CPPL podcast. Number 2, it's going to take a while for you to get used to it. It took me a while back in 2020. It still takes my parents some. They're still trying to adjust to it, especially when they're watching games that is not hosted by their favorite teams. But it's going to take a while to get used to it, and the music is going to drive away some people. But the CPBL the All-Star Game has brought in a lot of old baseball fans. And then the Joe Sichi retirement, which I also spent an episode on, I talked about how May Day was such an important part of that retirement. The band May Day, which is probably, somebody said they were the Beatles of Taiwanese music. I don't know if I would say that, but they are very big. They are huge. And they brought in a lot of mainstream media attention for during the Joe Sichi retirement, and that is one of those stories where you want to be put in front of mainstream media when you're trying to gain some momentum in reestablishing yourself as a clean baseball league. And Joe Sichi's story was told over and over during those period of time where I had family and friends that I never that don't watch baseball, but and I did not know watch baseball that would ask me about Joe Sichi's story. And that is when I knew, okay, the CPPL, Taiwan has given the CPPL. No, let me change it to another way of saying this. The history of time has given back the CPPL another shot at gaining confidence and legitimacy as a professional baseball league. And Joe Sichi's story with the Taipei Dome being built today, Joe Sichi's story, the retirement, and the fact that May Day was there was a perfect combination of all of the elements that was the final nail in the coffin for a lot of older baseball fans, and a refreshing, not refreshing, but a very important first step to get a lot of mainstream people that could be interested in baseball to come back and watch the CPBL. And that's one of the reasons why I think the 2024 season was so great. The Joe Sichi's retirement ceremony has, in my opinion, is probably more influential than the All-Star Game. The All-Star Game, you have to watch baseball. I mean, you know Chien-Ming Wang, but if you're like a non-baseball watching Taiwanese person, you know about Chien-Ming Wang. Okay, the 2 years he was pitching, everybody in the league was watching him pitch. But you know Chien-Ming Wang, and okay, there's like Chen Jingfeng, and then there's a couple of players. That's cool. That's a cool moment. It's a huge moment for baseball people, but for non-baseball people, it's cool. I think for Zhou Siqi's ceremony, it was a little bit more because the fact that Mayday was performing and the story of Zhou Siqi, the way that he fought through all of the dark times. That was his career is the epitome of the CPBL, and that's the story where you want people to know, you want people to tell, because the perseverance of Zhou Siqi's career is one that is also parallel to the development of the CPBL over the last 20 years. So that on top of the All-Star game, that on top of the Taipei Dome being built, which especially the dome. The dome has had fingerprints all over the biggest events of Taiwanese baseball, and that's why I started with it. And then at the end of the year, you're talking about Taiwan winning the Premier 12. I said the Premier 12 was the final nail in the coffin for older baseball fans. And I also did say, for some fans, the Zhou Siqi retirement was probably the one that brought him back. But there is absolutely no doubt that the Premier 12 has brought this 2024 season to an all-new level of excitement and all-new level of greatness when you talk about not only have the Premier 12 brought back old fans, it has brought back all of the old one-day fans, and has brought back all of the new fans, has brought in all of the new fans that is now going to look at the CPBL for the next 2 years until the next World Baseball Classic, which is going to be huge. Until the next World Baseball Classic, you can legitimately have an idea in your mind that when you go into the CPBL, you're watching baseball that is on par with the best baseball being played around the world. Now, I do want to preface, that is not my opinion. But with the performance of the Team Taiwan's with the performance of Team Taiwan in the Premier 12, you are creating that idea among probably newer fans. As long as they come into the games, that's a win if you're Taiwanese baseball. As long as you're coming to the game, it's like and the CPBL has done so much in the last few years to widen the funnel that will eventually bring in a lot of people. I think I talked about this in the last episode. For the CPBL and Taiwanese baseball is like a water bottle, and you're trying to get as much water in the water bottle as possible. And you're trying to make a funnel, right, that can bring in as much water to your water bottle as possible. For a good while, not only have the CPBL not have a funnel, but they made a reverse funnel where people, they topple the water bottle, so the water has left the bottle, and now you're trying to kind of put it back in the bottle. And I think the CPBL has done a good enough job where they're bringing enough people back into the bottle, and they're also widening, and they also made a pretty good funnel that's through the cheerleading, through the marketing, through 15 years of really hard work of people that I had the pleasure to meet at the CPBL when I was working there. Through a lot of hard work, they have widened the funnel to a good amount. Now, I don't... Look, it's an analogy, right? I don't really... the funnel is in a good shape, is what I'm trying to say. Now, with the Premier 12, with the dome, the funnel is huge. The funnel is great. It's a really wide funnel now. You're trying... It's probably as wide as the CPBL has ever seen. And... the All-Star game was a pretty good rainstorm, so you brought in some water, and then the Zhou Siqi's retirement was, in my opinion, pretty big rainstorm. Okay, the Premier 12 is a friggin' tsunami. I don't know. It's like a I know it's like a typhoon, or it's like a hurricane, but it's typhoon because we're in Asia. It's a typhoon that's gonna bring in a lot of water, and how much water are we gonna get? We don't know until next year. How much can we keep? I don't know about next. I wouldn't know until next year. But I do know that the funnel is in a very good shape. The bottle is in a very good shape, and the bottle sure has a lot of space for a lot more fans and a lot more water. That is my very interesting analogy. But it's a funnel, and the CPBI has created a good funnel, and they've also created a typhoon. The fact that their players won the championship has created a typhoon, and it's great. I do want to point out this before I go away. Taiwanese baseball is still not at the level of Japan. Still not at the level of Korea. I think I mentioned it last time as well. Taiwanese baseball people understood the randomness that goes into a short-term baseball tournament. That the fact that we won the Premier 12 has large part due to the 2 home runs that we hit against Korea. We literally scored 6 runs in the span of 4 pitches. Okay, and if not for those 2 home runs, we probably would have lost to Korea, and all of this were up to smoke. We understand that in the Tokyo round, if you add the middle, outside of the middle game, Taiwan has only won 1 game. Okay? Now, I even talked about this before the gold medal games, even the bronze medal games. Look, Venezuela could be in the USA, and Taiwan could have lost to Japan. So you're talking about Venezuela winning 2 games in Tokyo, Taiwan winning 1 game in Tokyo, and Venezuela has beaten Taiwan head-to-head, and yet Taiwan is 2nd and Venezuela's 3rd. Now, one of the games in Tokyo for Taiwan did not hold any weight because the teams for the championship games have already been determined by then. But that's my point, right? Like, there's a lot of coincidences that Taiwan took advantage of, and I'm also not saying this was all luck, because you can have all the luck in the world, but if you're not good enough, you're not gonna win it all at the end. Well, luck is only for people that's prepared for it, and Taiwan was good enough to exploit as much coincidences as they received. Taiwan has also only lost 1 game of significance, despite losing 3. But again, 2 of them, they lost 3 games. Well, the first game was against Japan. You could say is of significance, but in theory, after beating Korea, you're basically holding you're holding your own destiny at that point, right? Even if you lost to Japan, it would have been nice to beat Japan, but it wasn't the end of the world when you beat Japan. When you lose to Japan, the Taiwan has only lost 1 game of real, like an actual game that could really hurt your confidence, and that was the Venezuela game, and that is still the first game of the super round. So you talk about having great chemistry of this team. I agree with all of that, but if you're talking about losing to Korea in game 1, you can't tell me this team has great chemistry, because from what we've heard in the World Baseball Classic squad, until like 2 weeks ago, they had great chemistry, but they lost to Panama in game 1. That obviously dampens the mood. If Taiwan had lost to Korea in game 1, that would dampen the mood, but the fact that we beat Korea, it makes it much easier to feel good about yourself, and that is what we did. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way we won the championship. I'm still celebrating the championship as it is, and we're getting the respect that we deserve from this championship. But what I'm saying is, if you're from the Taiwanese baseball community, you understand that if Korea had a different starting pitcher for game 1, it would have looked like a very different tournament. if Jiang Kun did not have that triple against the U.S., you're talking about maybe not making the gold medal round, or you having to beat Japan in the super round in order to make it to the gold medal round, right? That's all I'm saying. That's the thing that's the thing about international tournaments. It's a short-term tournament that will treat you fairly or unfairly, and if you're the CPBL, the results of that, unfortunately, will unfairly change the way people look at you as a baseball league. But in a short-term tournament, it will also fairly or unfairly benefit you, and you can make the argument that unless you're good enough, you're not going to be able to exploit all of those benefits. And Taiwan was good enough this year. When I was thinking, well, but I want to come back to this a little bit, because I want to talk about the end of the game in the gold medal round, because, well, I don't know, I probably won't have the time. I'll probably find another time, but I've seen a lot of people saying at the ninth inning or in the late innings of the gold medal game, you're like, oh, all of the PTSD of Team Taiwan was coming back, especially the ninth inning when the leadoff man got on base for Japan. To me, I thought I had the same worry, but not in a traditional way. I thought the only reason Japan would come back is because Taiwan had missed so many opportunities on the offense in the second part of that game. Second half of that game, Taiwan was just bad with opportunities that they were given. They had 2 men on base, more than I can count, and they couldn't score a single run. I thought that was when maybe the momentum would have shifted. But then you look at how Japan was hitting in those innings, especially the eighth. They were swinging at pitches in the dirt. It's fastballs in the dirt, not talking about like nasty sliders. To me, it felt like Japan was on their heels a little bit. The winning streak was the pressure of the winning streak got on them a little bit, but at the same time, I did not think, especially the second half of that game, Taiwan was quote unquote using up the quota, the lucky quota. And in the span of a baseball game, there will be a couple of plays that you get lucky. Maybe, and it's like the turnovers in college football. If you, or in football in general, there's like a turnover margin, right? And turnovers are one of the things that's hardest to predict. To me, baseball has those plays where the margin of those lucky plays, it doesn't differentiate outside too much from the norm, but it can hurt you. But at times it will get you one back in the following game, in the following inning. And to me, the defense on the defensive side of the ball, outside of the fifth inning, which Taiwan kind of gave up an error at first base, which was given a hit, but it was more like an error from Ban Jie-kai. Taiwan was so strong pitching wise. It wasn't like we were strong pitching on the pitching side, but that was like off a fluke hit or like a fluke ground out or stuff like that. It felt like we were in control defensively, that we didn't rely on the lucky plays. That I felt like in the ninth inning, and it's gonna sound like I'm making this up right now, but it felt like in the ninth inning, with the men on base, especially with 1 out, you're thinking a lucky play here and there, we can get 2 quick outs, or as long as we get 2 outs with and Japan doesn't score a run before we get 2 outs, it's all gonna be fine, because a lucky play here and there, you're gonna get the outs. The odds are too much again. But the only reason I thought maybe the karma wasn't on our side is because we gave up so many opportunities on the offense. But Japan kind of gave those away when they were swinging at pitches in the dirt. Like there's like a karma thing going on in baseball, to me. And in the ninth inning, I thought, look, leadoff man's on base, fine. A lot of people got nervous. I guess I was a little bit nervous, but not as much as other people, because I was thinking, look, a freaky play here and there is gonna get you a couple outs, and then all of a sudden you're talking about Japan only have 1 out to score 4 runs, which is again not the most implausible thing in the world. We've all seen it. If there's a team that can blow it, it would be Taiwan. But at the end we got that lucky play, line drive to first base that's caught at the knees, below, like at the ankles, and then the step on first for the double play. I'm still watching the game highlights. I'm still listening to watching all the reaction videos. I'm still doing all of that stuff, and it's been like 3 weeks, but I'm still doing that stuff. It's the first one. It's the first championship. There won't be another championship won by Team Taiwan, probably outside of winning our first World Baseball Classic, which is like a pipe dream. Really is. Don't try to tell me it's not. It's a pipe dream to win a World Baseball Classic right now. But there isn't going to be a single moment in Taiwanese baseball history, unless there's like a team of 25 Taiwanese players that wins the World Series, all on the same Major League Baseball team, and wins a World Series. There isn't going to be a single moment that will mean as much as this one. The fact that this is the first World Championship. I thought about it. Hopefully I get to see more in my lifetime, but nothing will beat this one, because this is the first one. It's the one that breaks the zero. It's the one that gives people the confidence that we can do this. And eliminates the doubt, I think, of Taiwanese baseball. And there won't be another championship that means as much as this one, because this is the first one. Maybe like if like we don't win one in like 50, 60 years, and or maybe in the case of Kano, right? Like it's like 100 years ago that they won second place at Koshien. Maybe if we don't win another one in 100 years, maybe the next one at like 21-24, maybe that will mean bigger or mean as much as this one. But man, it feels good to be alive as a Taiwanese, to be able to witness that moment. It's huge. It is unbelievably huge for Taiwanese baseball, and that is why 2024 is the greatest year in Taiwanese baseball history. That is it for this episode of Rants with Danny Shi. I wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'm going skiing next week, and then after that, I don't think I'll have time to do another show. So, pray for me. Hopefully, I come back alive from the skiing. I ski like bunny hills at most, but my cousins really want me to go up to not the Black Diamonds, of course, but like to the big ones. I'm like, all right, don't kill me. All right, so if you have any skiing tips, as long as I can understand what you're saying, feel free to hit them my way. If you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to let me know. This is Daniel Shi, and we'll see you guys next time.